Hello, Tracy. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks.
I'm very happy that you could join me this week for another session. I'd like to start off, if you don't mind, by just checking in and seeing how things have been with you since we met last week.
Um, Pretty good. I'd say I'm working more on my practicum stuff, so
Okay.
trying to get that put together and lined out before the last minute, like my last one. So I'm working really hard to hopefully get something lined out.
Okay, so, the things that we've touched on so far in our first two sessions has been centered around the fact that you didn't really know, like, what that was going to look like, and you had been experiencing some um, feelings, I guess, of frustration, worry, anxiety, scared about not really having a good game plan for what that practicum was going to look like. So has that changed? Do you have more of a plan in place, or what's new with that this
Actually,
week?
there is new stuff with that. I have a meeting tomorrow morning with the other half of Preferred, where I work with the drug and alcohol side. They have had some job postings up since July and August. And the gal that I talked to had shared with me that they had not had any viable candidates for quite some time. And one of them is for an assistant counselor position. One is for adolescent and one is for adults. So I'm going to talk to them about the things that I need to do for my practicum and possibly getting a transfer over there to do my practicum.
Wonderful. So that sounds like that's a step in the right direction.
I hope so. I'm going to say I kind of start getting nervous and thinking, so I try not to think about it.
Okay. So my next question was going to be, what are the feelings this week compared to last week? Last week the words you used was frustrated, anxious, and worried. So how are we feeling this week?
Anxious and worried.
Anxious and worried. And you said nervous just a second ago. Is nervous a good one?
Nervous, right. I'm going to say I kind of subscribe to Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And I'm trying really hard to use what you'd said, because I did get a practicum worked out before and I did successfully complete it. So, it stands to reason that another one should be able to be fairly easily worked out. I guess the worry part of it is it's, being a single mom, house payment, all the bills and stuff of trying to complete school and still be able to get the practicum and paid. That is probably my biggest worry with all of it.
So there's still, it sounds like one of the things that I think, touched on initially at the first session was had to do with a lot of it stemmed from like the whole balancing aspect of work and personal life and how are we going to make all of this work. So it sounds like maybe some of that is still consistent with how you felt then, as far as, maybe you have hopefully a better game plan or a path that you can go down as far as like what the actual practicum will look like, but then you still have the aspect of, even if I do get it figured out, I still have to balance it with my regular work duties and being a mom and running a household. So,
well, I'm going to say it appears as if, I'm going to say, a positive spin to some of this is the position I'm looking at. I'll be able to count 40 hours a week towards my program, which will make it go quicker.
good.
So, and also, I'm going to say I talked to my advisor from college, and she thinks this would be an absolutely phenomenal move, and it would be a good, area to get into for my practicum for a multitude of reasons. But also, once I get done with the practicum and test and get that passed for my LMSW, then we need to start collecting hours to become licensed for the LCSW. And I believe this job or this transfer would mean that I would almost immediately be able to move right into collecting hours for that. So I'm, I'm happy and positive that that's all gonna be a possibility. So I guess where I've taken before and looked at, like you said, I've done a practicum before, and this is looking promising because they've not had applicants, but there's kind of more added pressure now because if I can make this happen, then I'll be able to like transition into hours for my LCSW, which is exciting and scary. And it seems like it just never ends. There's more. Just as soon as I get something figured out and less stress, then something else cruises on in to take its place.
Yeah, and I'm very glad to hear that you've made some progress definitely over the last week, and it sounds like not only like with our practicum, which was our primary focus for our therapy goals is getting that figured out and reducing some of the anxiety and the stress you were feeling over that. But not only are you starting to figure that out, but perhaps a more like long-term plan is starting to form and take shape for like what you can do for even after you're done with that practicum and have finished grad school. So that's, while positive, is obviously, like you said, stress
I'm trying to keep
as well.
It as a positive, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. And do you think that, or have you seen any evidence that trying to keep, that positive focus on it and try to view it from that positive perspective, has that been helpful for you? Or have you noticed?
Yeah, I'm trying to identify more positives, like the fact that the jobs have been open for so long, the fact that, she told me that they'd not had any viable candidates, the fact that there are multiple positions open, but it seems like for every couple positives I get, there's at least one or two negatives that sneak in, but I just try and keep thinking about the positives.
Well, that's good, and that's definitely something that we can continue to work on. I'd like to get some input from you. I guess first, let's follow up. You've brought it up several times already in the brief discussion that we have had about reminding yourself about the note card homework that I assigned last week was in regards to your practicum. Last week you expressed some concerns. I think the automatic thought that you gave last week was, this is never going to work. And so we spent some time collecting some evidence that supported that automatic thought, but that also evidence that contrasted that automatic thought. And one of the things we discussed that contrasted your thought that it wouldn't work out was that you have already done a practicum during your grad school experience and you were able to successfully complete it. And so I had you agreed to write on the card that if you began to feel stressed or worried about completing this new or this upcoming practicum, that you would remind yourself that, hey, I have done this before and I'm capable of doing it again. So obviously you've been able to kind of repeat that back to me today. Were you able to keep that card with you throughout the last week and kind of continuously remind yourself about that?
Yeah, honestly, anything that I can note that's positive, I've just been trying to concentrate more on that than the negative.
Okay. So even applying it to more than just like that one specific thing that we talked about?
Right. I'm going to say what, and it was kind of funny because right after we did that, I'm going to say kind of all of this materialized with the potential transfer. So I just tried to pick out, the positive things from that and just kind of keep repeating them to myself, hoping to keep the negative thoughts in the back 40.
Kind of keep those negative thoughts at bay?
Yes.
Good. I'm interested to hear, last week we talked about the goals that we developed for treatment, which were, one, figure out assessment, and two, to kind of reduce some of the worry that you were feeling over that. Have you thought of any other goals that you want to address in treatment, or do those goals look any different now? Or I'm interested in getting some input from you about that.
I think focus just in, I mean, with the practicum, obviously, because that's like pretty much the only thing that matters that's going on right now in my life. But just being able to apply that across the board and just identify positives in any situation. I think if I can get better at that, maybe I wouldn't be so stressed with any situation that arises.
Okay. So you said practicum is the only thing that really matters right now. So is it safe to assume that that's still a top priority as far as what you want to put on our agenda for our ongoing sessions? Is that what you want to continue to work on today? Or is there something else that's more of a higher priority right now?
Not just that, I'm saying sometimes I just kind of, when the negatives creep in, it's, you know, it's like, how am I going to deal with it if I don't get this? And I try really hard not to think about that. But in the same token, it's like, you know, what am I going to do?
Okay.
So,
Over the last week, in regards to your practicum, have you been able to recognize or note any new thoughts that you've experienced in regards to being able to get this done? Last week, the feeling you identified was this is never going to work. So, has that changed at all? Have you noticed, new thoughts?
well,
Now that you've been trying to incorporate some more positive thinking into the
I'm definitely more positive with the prospect of, you know, multiple positions being open, you know, in a transfer position across town in a different department. So, you know, it's like, it's kind of hard to think it won't work when there's 2 or 3 positions open that they've been saying, you know, they can't find qualified people for, plus the fact that, you know, it's an in-company transfer, which will make life easier for all of them as far as like orientation and paperwork and such as that. So I'm working really hard to keep identifying the positive, and that seems to be the biggest one right now that's developed.
Um, Something that I want to follow up on that you mentioned earlier, kind of early on in our discussion. You made a statement that I jotted down on my notebook paper because I thought it was interesting, and it kind of, I thought it would be a good lead into what I want to talk about today, if you're all right with it, in regards to continuing to kind of exploring those thoughts and you know where they stem from and kind of what those thoughts and what those not only your automatic thoughts, but your overall, beliefs. Like you made the statement that you feel like whatever can go wrong will go wrong.
Yes.
And so that seems to be pretty consistent with some automatic thoughts that you've expressed, like last week, hey, this is not going to work out. So is whatever can go wrong will go wrong a rule that you typically live by? Is that a Tracy rule, or is that something that goes through your head a lot, or tell me more about like where that thought is coming from.
Well, it's, if you expect the worst, then you're not going to be disappointed, and if something better happens, then it's a positive.
Okay.
It's a lot easier to be happy with something that happens instead of, you know, looking for something and expecting that it'll happen and then be disappointed.
So is that how you typically approach situations then, kind of with this idea that, if I think nothing good's going to happen, or if I think that it's going to end badly, then likely I won't be disappointed? If that's what does happen, is that you kind of approach it with that already kind of, I'm just gonna expect the worst, hope for the best, maybe type of mentality?
Pretty much. I'm going to say, if you expect the worst, then anything better than that's an improvement.
If it's all right with you, I think that's a good, a good thought and a good, I guess, I call it a Tracy rule, kind of a rule that you have about maybe yourself or your life in general, kind of these rules that you live by, or these assumptions, that you make about yourself or about your life as an individual. I would like to spend more time, if you're okay with it, exploring, more kind of these thoughts and these rules and assumptions that you have about your life. And I would like to do that. I actually have a worksheet that I brought with me today. It's called Evaluating Assumptions, Rules, and Standards. And so on this worksheet, it just has about 15 typical assumptions that people can have, about themselves, general assumptions. And so what I would like to do, how this worksheet works, is just I would read off the assumption and you would rate for me how much you think that applies to you. And that rating scale can be however you want it to. You can either rate it like as a percentage, like on a scale from 0 to 100, 0 being, I don't really believe that at all, or it doesn't apply to me, and then 100 being, yes, that applies to me wholeheartedly. Or if it's easier for you to do like a 0 to 10 rating scale, whereas like 0 is, no, it doesn't apply to me, 10 is, yes, it applies to me almost completely. I would like to do that with you, and maybe that can kind of help us identify some more rules or some more assumptions that you live by that may be contributing to kind of some of these automatic thoughts that you've expressed and that you experience on an ongoing basis. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, so do you want to do like a 0 to 100 percentage scale, or you want to do just like a 0 to 10 rating scale? What's your preference?
Do the 0 to 10.
Okay. So the first example of a typical assumption, and again, you just tell me how much you think this rates to you, how much this applies to you, 0 being none at all, 10 being completely, 5 being in the middle. The first assumption is, I must be perfect in everything that I do. What would you rate that?
That would probably be about an 8.
8? Okay. The next, if I fail at something, then I'm a failure.
That would probably be about an 8.
Okay. I can't stand failure.
I would say that's about a 7. I can't stand it, but, well, we all experience it at times, so.
Okay. How about I must receive approval from everyone to like myself?
Oh, that's probably like a 3.
If someone thinks less of me, then I must think less of myself.
That's like a 0.
I can't stand it when people think less of me.
It's like a 0.
You have to impress people with your personality.
Maybe a 5.
If I'm not perfect, people won't like
me. That's probably back up in the 8s again.
Okay. Some people are better than others.
Some people are better than others?
Yes.
That's probably like a 2.
Okay. If I'm not certain about things, then they probably won't work out.
That's probably a 10.
Okay. It's important to have all the information before you make a decision.
That's probably like a 9.
Okay. I shouldn't be depressed, angry, anxious, etc.
Probably about a 7.
Other people should do things my way.
Oh, well, it's probably about a 3.
Okay. If I make a mistake, then I should criticize myself.
That I should?
Yes, that you should.
Probably about a 7.
Okay. And then the last one, if people offend me, then I should get back at them.
Can you repeat that?
If people offend me, then I should get back at them?
Oh, no, that'd be like a 1.
Okay. All right. So in reviewing this form real quickly, it appears that the ones that you rated as most applying to you was I must be perfect in everything that I do. If I fail at something, then I'm a failure. And it's important, if I'm not certain about things, then they probably won't work out. And it's important to have all the information before you make a decision. So I see somewhat of a pattern there in regards to, I guess one of the other ones that was rated the same was if I'm not perfect, people won't like me. So there seems to be somewhat of a pattern there in regards to it being pretty important to you to be perfect or to be near perfect in the things that you do, so that not only you feel good, but so that other people will like you. I mean, do you think that that reflects how you feel accurately? Is it important to you to be perfect all the time, or to be near perfect all the time, or?
I strive for it. I can say I value doing a good job at whatever I do.
Okay, so what if you're not perfect? What does that look like, or what does that mean?
That I have room for improvement. I should be working more towards something or learning more about something so that I can do a good job.
Okay, so do you think if you don't do something perfectly that you're not doing a good job?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. How often would you think that that applies? That doing a good job equals perfection?
Oh, all the time. I mean, that's what, why would someone want to hire you if you do a bad job?
Um, and so, do you think that not doing something perfectly means doing a bad job?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Um,
there's things we learn, but it's one of those, if you learn it well, then you would be doing a good job.
okay. And so doing things well and doing a good job and being perfect to you are pretty similar things.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have like any coworkers at your job, or any other staff members that you work pretty closely with?
Yeah, there are a few.
Would you say that they do a good job at their work?
Yeah, most of them.
Would you say that everything they do perfectly?
No, want to say we all mess up. I'm hard on myself when I do it.
Okay. So in regards to your coworkers, like if they, if they completed a task, but it wasn't 100% perfect, like how would you feel about that?
Well, I mean, we're all human and we make mistakes. I just try really hard not to.
Okay. So if they made, a minor mistake on a project or on an assignment or on a task, would you think that they shouldn't have been hired? Because one of the terms you used earlier was like, why would they want to hire somebody who doesn't do perfectly all the time? I mean, do you think not being perfect all the time in regards to a coworker would, like, is grounds to be like, oh, I don't want you to work here anymore?
Well, no, most of the time the mistakes that happen can be easily fixed.
Okay. And so, do you think it's what do you think are some reasons why we make mistakes sometimes, or not even mistakes per se, but what are some reasons why we as humans, or why you as a human, or why your coworker as a human might like not do something completely perfectly?
Might be distracted or have trying to do more than one thing at a time and overlook it, or trying to do paperwork and a phone call comes in or somebody else comes in, and there's lots of room for error depending on what's going on in the office.
Okay, do you think those are a pretty typical or pretty reasonable reason for why, something might not be done, might not be done perfectly?
Oh, yeah.
So, do you think, like, applying that to a coworker, can you reflect that back on yourself? And if you don't do something perfectly because you've got a lot going on, or because you're distracted, or because you know there's interruptions, or any of the things that you've just expressed, like, do you feel differently about reflecting that back on yourself as you would, when you think about it in terms of a coworker?
A little bit. I mean, I understand in my head everybody makes mistakes, but just me personally, I try really hard to be meticulous and not make mistakes. Now, do I make mistakes? Yeah, I do. Do I fix them as quickly as I find them? Absolutely.
And so, how do you feel, is having the opportunity or being able to go back and fix your mistakes acceptable to you, or do you feel like it needs to be done, perfectly the first time?
It's acceptable, and I say most of the time I catch my own mistakes, so that helps. I think it bothers me worse when somebody else notices it and points it out to me. That's when I really feel bad, because then somebody else has noticed it, so they're going to know I screwed up.
But it is something that you can easily fix typically?
Yeah, normally, yeah. If not, I know, with the new computer system we've got, I know who to go to help me fix it.
Okay.
But I don't like to bother them.
Okay. So it sounds like if, you recognize that we're all humans and that we all make mistakes, and sounds like what you've been able to express is that you catch a lot of your own mistakes, and which is obviously a sign, of you having learned, and have made progress. But also that if there is one that you don't catch, you know who to go to or how to fix it pretty quickly, and you can get that done efficiently.
Right.
So does that make you feel better or differently about things if you don't do it, perfect the first time?
Yeah. Honestly, if I made a mistake and wasn't able to go back and correct it, that would be very not okay.
But if you knowing who to go to, knowing how to correct the error if it is done, that's more acceptable to you.
Right.
So kind of being able to learn and to problem solve, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I can do. I like if I do it right the first time, then I don't have to do all the extra work of correcting the problem.
All right. Well, I think that, we're on a good track right now as far as, identifying some of these Tracy rules, like I call them. We touched on a couple today, and I'd like to continue to explore those in further sessions if that's all right with you. We'll wrap up for today unless there's anything else that you feel we need to touch on.
No, I think that's good.
Do you have any concerns about the session? Any thing you liked or didn't like?
Was interesting seeing how many Tracy rules, and the fact that I'm a little more concerned with doing things right than I maybe had given myself credit for before that.
Okay. Anything you would like to see be done differently next time?
Nope, I think we're doing a good job.
All righty. Will next week at the same time be all right for you?
That'll work, yes.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate you participating in the session today, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, see ya.
Bye.